Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story and we put the spotlight on you. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. When you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this ministry with a monthly recurring amount of as little as $3. Check out my website and see what I offer that can be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming for you. I'm available for speaking engagements, in-person and virtual seminars, so please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Amanda and Justine. Justine grew up surrounded by addiction and trauma. She vowed to make a difference in the world and thought she could do so by becoming a criminal defense attorney. And once she got into the field, she realized the issues were so much larger than she had once thought. She is joined in this interview with Amanda, who has also had her share of understanding that the criminal justice system is not quite what they thought it was or should be. We are happy, thrilled, excited to have both of them come and share with me today. Listeners, I know you're going to appreciate this interview and what they have to say. Amanda and Justine, I need both of you all to just tell listeners of this podcast a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from.
All right, I'll go first. I'm Justine. As you stated, I am a criminal defense attorney, and I wanted to be one, I think, probably since about 7th grade. And I am currently in the state of Florida.
Okay.
And I'm Amanda. I am a legal assistant in a criminal defense firm. I did not grow up thinking that that's where I would be. I just so happened to stumble into a job and then fell in love with it and was rocked by the things that I saw in doing so.
All right. Well, Justine and Amanda, I've read your profile and gotten a little bit about you and know that you are an attorney and that Amanda works as a legal assistant. And so you obviously have quite a bit that you can say as it relates to the criminal justice system. And I want to say, having practiced law myself for 10 years, this is the first time that I've had an attorney on my podcast. So the conversation, I know, is going to be very, very interesting. So the first thing I want to just ask you, Justine, and I will ask the same question of Amanda, why she ended up in the criminal justice system. But I want to ask you first, why did you choose to go into criminal law or to be a criminal defense attorney? That you could have chosen to be, do torts, personal injury, real estate lawyer. There's so many areas you could have chosen to do, but you decided you want to be a criminal defense lawyer. Why?
Yeah, I probably could have made much more money in those other areas too.
That's
but here
true.
I am. So for me, as you kind of stated in the beginning, I grew up surrounded by addiction. A lot of my loved ones suffer from substance use disorder. And although growing up, I didn't know what that was or that's what was happening around me, as I got into my late teens and early 20s, I had a very full picture of what was going on around me and the trauma that caused growing up in that. I didn't really have a traditional upbringing, although I look back and I look at it as a happy childhood. Um, I would say it's probably not the same as a quote unquote normal childhood. So, um, growing up in that and seeing the pain that my family went through because of what was going on, I decided that I wanted to change the world and help people who suffered from addiction and substance use disorder not go to prison, and not be in and out of jail, and to try and help people. And when I was in undergrad, I actually started being introduced to treatment courts, such as drug court, mental health court. And I saw the profound impact that those had on the people who were able to get into those programs and graduate. And it was so different than the outcomes that I had seen with my loved ones in and out of jail that I thought for sure I wanted to really promote treatment and treatment courts, alternatives to incarceration. And that's why I went into criminal defense.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. I, I'm always curious when I hear people talk about why they go into certain areas. I was primarily just a general trial practitioner, going, practicing law in a small town. You couldn't basically just specialize in any particular area because you would lose quite a bit of business. So we just learn how to do a little bit of it all. So, but to hear somebody who is, wants to specialize in it, is relatively interesting. Amanda, same question to you. Basically, you worked as a legal assistant and was I think you kind of answered the question as you were talking, uh, that you didn't intend to go in. It wasn't anything that you had thought about from the beginning, but it was something that you kind of found yourself thrust upon. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was actually serving and bartending for many years and I was over it. And I stumbled upon a receptionist job at a criminal defense firm. And so I got my foot in the door that way. And then I really enjoyed helping people navigate that system. But I also saw how messed up the system is. So that really sparked us making our podcast, and advocating for these people.
Okay. Now you, Amanda and Justine, now are doing this together. You're kind of like co-hosts of your own podcast. Uh, how did you all get together, and how did this come about? Both of you obviously had the same interests, and this is what happened, or just tell listeners of this podcast how this came about.
I was the receptionist at the legal defense firm that Justine got hired onto.
Okay.
So we met at work.
We met at
Okay.
work and became close friends. I actually was also going through some life trauma shortly after I started there, or I guess when I started there, and really just kind of imploded shortly after I started there. And Amanda really helped me navigate that part of my life. It was something that she had experience in and could really help me see my own value at a time when I really couldn't see my own value. So I will be forever grateful and in Amanda's debt for that.
The
And
universe. It was just the universe putting us in the same place where we needed to be.
absolutely. And we would, you know, just talk about the injustices in the system. And we just would get so riled up about it that it was like, we need to educate, because I think what we both noticed was that even people who were in and out of the system in a repetitive cycle still did not understand the system they were in.
And
so
even the most compassionate people I knew still didn't know what was happening. So they can't care about something if they don't know about it, you know?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So we wanted to educate people about what was really going on in the criminal justice system.
Now, were you all working in a legal aid firm, office, or was this a firm of lawyers that the both of you found yourself working at? I'm asking that question because I want to kind of get a feel for that other attorneys in the office see things kind of the way you all did, or were you kind of looking at it in a different way than what they were looking at it?
I think they did see things the same way that we did.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to work in criminal defense and not see
Okay.
what we were seeing. So I do think it is a practice that can get people jaded rather quickly if you don't find something to keep that fire lit, which was exactly what we did with our show. Is when we started our show, that just kind of relit that flame in me. Not that it was out, but it can get tedious at times, kind of seeing the same situations over and over again, and getting frustrated. So having that flame lit within me really keeps me working the hardest and the best and make sure I'm doing my best all the time at my job.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Amanda?
I mean, I feel like it's a little different for me because I'm not an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only so much fighting I can do,
Okay.
legally.
Okay.
So it gave me, making the podcast gave me an outlet to fight for people in that way.
Okay.
So similar, but a little different.
Okay. I'm asking this because see, I've worked as an attorney, but I've also served in the capacity as a legal assistant because when I came out of confinement, I had a lawyer who gave me the opportunity to work in his office. So, as a lawyer, that's what they kind of call us, a legal assistant, paralegal. So I, I'm asking that question because I actually, in my situation, I really had a lot of input. They relied on me for a lot. So I want you to know, and I'm certain that Justine can say the same thing. You know, paralegals or legal assistants have a whole lot to say and can help in your thought
That
pattern and where you're going. It can be really great.
that was one of my favorite parts of the job, really, is
Okay.
when they want my opinion as a layperson, not as an attorney.
Okay.
That was always fun for me.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just wanted to know, make certain you kind of saw your value as you were working
Well,
in that
thank
area.
you.
And I know Justine will say the same thing.
Oh,
if
absolutely.
you do offer quite a bit. I know that
Well, thank you.
I know Justine from your personal struggles. You obviously have been able to have a lot of passion and empathy for your clients, but how do you work through that as you are dealing with your clients? Because clients, to be honest with you, and I know you know this, 90 99% of them are basically guilty, okay, of whatever they have been charged with. So, I, how do you deal with this because of your own personal struggle and what you have been through yourself, how you handle that situation when you're dealing with your clients.
Well, for me, first and foremost, you have to meet people where they're at.
Okay.
And it's important to not come at people from a place where you are above them, because I'm not, right? We're all equal humans on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing is, because of my experience, I can say, hey, I understand why you did this. Unfortunately, the elements would probably be able to be proven at trial if we're talking about somebody who is guilty of the crime they're charged of.
Mm-hmm.
And your best option would be to resolve it. And most of the time, most of my clients either have substance use or mental health. And I can kind of gauge where they're at and ask them if they're at a place where they are ready to get treatment or change their life. Unfortunately, because of sentencing laws, because of mandatory minimums, because of score sheets, because of some things that the legislature have put in place, that's not always a possibility. But if somebody wants treatment, for me, I will go above and beyond to try and make that happen.
Okay.
So whether it's prison followed by treatment sometimes, or whether it's really getting the state to come down to my level and be able to work with me on a resolution that involves them getting treatment. So I really enjoy those types of outcomes. And most of the time, people do want a resolution. They don't want to take the risk of going to trial. They know that they will probably be found guilty at trial. And so they have to be able to make the best option for them and their families at that point in time in whatever they're facing. And so just being able to meet them where they're at and understand where they're coming from, which with what they might think is best for them and their family, being able to give them all the pros and cons of their choices, and then ultimately knowing that it's their choice when it comes down to it.
Okay.
If they want to go to trial, that's their choice. If they want to go to treatment, that's their choice, and just being able to support them in that.
I will say that Justine is really good at connecting with her clients.
Okay. Okay. Do you have the opportunity, Amanda, to interview clients? I know, if it's like in North Carolina, giving advice and is out of the picture, but we are allowed to interview and take the information and pass it on to the lawyers. Is that something that you're allowed to do in Florida?
Not really. I
Okay.
mean, I'm a listening ear. Most people just want to talk to somebody about what's going on in their life. And a lot of the time, especially when I was a receptionist, I heard a lot of stories because, people just want to talk.
Okay.
But I kind of felt like I was like a buffer, let them get their emotions out, and then they could talk to their lawyer when they're calmed down and understanding what's going on. I felt like that was my part a lot.
Okay,
as a receptionist anyway.
So you say, here I am, throw it all on me, and then I'll let you go back and talk with the attorney. That basically it.
Basically.
Okay. I
enjoyed it though, really.
I got you. And I do understand. Having a little fun, but I do understand. I don't know what the situation is in Florida, but North Carolina, we have the death penalty, and there's a lot of debate on it. Some people feel as if it's something, you know, believing what they get from the Old Testament, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Then there are others who take the position, that we can't give a life, so why should we take a life? This is that debate about it. And I know that you personally, Justine, and I don't know how Amanda feels about this, but I do want to ask that question because it seems as if both of you may be against the death penalty, and you're working to abolish the death penalty. And so I want to ask you, why should we abolish the death penalty?
You want me to
Amanda,
go
do you
first?
want to? You go first.
Well, there's a lot of reasons to abolish the death penalty.
Okay.
Morally, we shouldn't be killing people. Number one, we shouldn't be letting the government kill people. Financially, it costs more money to keep people on death row. And for me, the most important reason is we often get it wrong. People are put on death row for crimes that they did not commit. We have executed people for crimes that they have not committed. In a country that gets it wrong so often, I feel like we shouldn't be executing people.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, and I will piggyback off of that. There are at least 190 exonerations from death row that we know of. Those are ones that have actually occurred since 1973 when we started tracking it during the death penalty moratorium. And that includes some people who unfortunately had already been executed by the time they were found to be innocent. Exonerations from death row take decades. We've had the pleasure of interviewing several people who have been exonerated from death row on Gin and Justice, our podcast, and they will never get those years of their lives back. For me, I joke that I kind of grew up this little emo gothic kid. I was a punk rocker and I listened to the Dead Kennedys and Bad Religion, and that was my genre of music. And so for me, it's like I don't want to give the government that much power to execute somebody.
Okay.
I don't think that's the government's place. And then along with all of the reasons that Amanda stated as well, I think there are certainly better alternatives. I think that, and then another big reason is the people who get the death penalty are really the most vulnerable populations. It is not the worst of the worst.
Right. I used to think that it was just serial killers that are getting the death penalty, and then I realized that it's mentally ill, it's the poor, it's the brown, it's disparities left and right.
Okay.
Yes. And we've had this year in Florida, we've had several executions take place over the last couple of months, basically as a political stunt at this point. Sadly, and every person who's been executed this year has been severely mentally ill in one way or another and have had extremely traumatic lives that led up to their decisions to murder somebody or people. So, those are some of the reasons that we
It's just
disagree with the death
archaic.
penalty.
I am. You're really touching me with this conversation, and I agree with you. I'm against the death penalty myself, and I'm reading a book by a friend of mine who goes into he ministered to inmates on death row, and he's been doing it for years. And so he wrote a book that's entitled "Joy," on how to experience joy on death row. And here in North Carolina, they've allowed him to use letters that the inmates wrote, and so there's a combination of the inmates' letters that they wrote, their feelings about certain issues and things, and he intertwines it with things that he has gone through. It's a very, very interesting read. I've enjoyed it, and as a matter of fact, I texted him the other day, messaged him on Facebook to just tell him that just had a few more pages to read. But it's really, really interesting. So when you start talking about, the death penalty, kind of brought all of that back to me. I literally cried reading the book. Uh, you all are interesting, and I'm really just I'm excited to talk to you. As I told you earlier, this is my first time talking to someone who is a part of the justice system, and having been a lawyer, and also having gone through the system. So it hits me, both ways, and I'm just excited to just talk and have you share your thoughts on this. Uh, Let me say this to you. I'm in the ministry, retired from the pastorate now. Actually, about 3 months short of 33 years pastoring at the same church. And I started this podcast because I wanted to continue my ministry by encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming lives. And so, what I want to ask both of you um, is, I know somebody who may be listening to this podcast who is in trouble, may have been uh, committed a crime. They have some addiction problems, or whatever it might be. I was a compulsive gambler, uh, and so people got all kinds of issues. So if you were to give them some encouragement or inspiration, what would you say to them? Uh, I think they would love to just hear your response. Either
I would say you are not the worst thing you've ever done.
mm,
Everybody on this planet makes mistakes,
like that.
and it's really about how we get up and learn from them and how we move forward, and that is the most important part. It's not the thing that you have done that is deemed bad. It is not the substance use disorder that you have. It is not the mental health issues that you're battling through. It is how you pick up and move forward with the knowledge that you have just gained. And we grow the most in times of pain and suffering.
Mm,
So
You
I
grow
love it.
through what you go through.
I like that. You grow through what you go through. Okay, okay.
Hmm.
I love that.
And you're just
Uh,
evolving. So sometimes
okay.
it takes hard lessons.
Mm,
And like
well,
Justine said, you're not the worst thing that you've ever done.
mm, that's well said. I am really I know listeners of this podcast are being really inspired and hopefully encouraged as they listen to these podcasts, because and I've done just today 83. I've interviewed 83 guests. And of course, I've also been interviewed, and I'm not counting that, just the guests that I have interviewed, as 83 already. And all of them, when I ask this question, they have some very powerful responses, as you all have. And so I know listeners, are honestly receiving it. And at least I hope that they are, because this is what I'm trying to do, and to help. Let me tell you to just hold on, and listeners, don't go any place, because Justine and Amanda is going to continue to give us a few more tidbits. But I want to ask both of them, if someone is interested in hearing one of your podcasts, or learning more about you all and what you do. And I don't know if you have a book. I don't know if you have any literature or anything. How will they contact you? How can they find you and learn more about you?
So we do have a website, ginandjusticepodcast.com, all spelled out.
Okay.
And we can be reached pretty frequently by our email, Justine at ginandjusticepodcast.com.
And
Okay.
Amanda at ginandjusticepodcast.com. We're also on all the social medias, so you can find us
Okay.
there too.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. So, listeners, you've got that information. So please keep that as you move forward, listening to these two individuals give us some really great information today. Let me ask you, what are some of the most important issues? Justine, and then Amanda, you can chime in if you wish, uh, that you feel need awareness, attention within the criminal justice system. And I know there are many, but if you just give me some, uh,
I was going to say, how much time do we have here?
I know there are many. Give me some.
So, one of the most important issues that I deal with day to day, that are at the forefront of my mind, is sentencing reform.
Okay.
Sentencing reform is so important because in a lot of states, especially here in Florida, the legislator has put in place statutes for mandatory minimums. And for listeners who are not sure what those are, that is where if you are convicted of a specific crime, the legislator has taken power away from the judge to determine your sentence and has basically put it in their hands. And the judge can't take into account any mitigating factors, such as maybe you committed a crime because you had substance use disorder or mental health, or you had a traumatic childhood, or you were in a domestic violence relationship and you're trying to escape. The judge can't take any of that into account, and they have to sentence you by what the legislator says the sentence should be. So if you're convicted of a crime with a mandatory minimum of 5 years, that's what you're doing, is 5 years. So mandatory minimums are a huge issue.
And is this, Justine, now, is this regardless of what other circumstances might have, if you could show that the person has an addiction or the person is a compulsive gambler or some other issues there, or the person may have some other mental illness, are you saying that the judge cannot take that into consideration?
That's correct. For instance, for an example, if you get charged in the state of Florida with, we'll just say trafficking in cocaine.
Okay.
We'll use that as an example. Actually, I'm going to switch that. We're going to go to trafficking in oxycodone because that's a lower weight and that's really easy to do.
Okay.
So trafficking is not proof that you are moving large weights of oxys across state lines and that you're making a lot of money and that you're controlling other people. That's not what trafficking is, although it sounds like that's what it is. Trafficking is purely by weight. So if you have 4 grams or more of oxycodone in your possession, you are trafficking in that drug. Now, you may be an addict and oxycodone may be your drug of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be very odd for you to have more than 4 grams, which is the weight of 4 grains of rice, or 4 paper clips. It's the equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be that odd for you to have that much on you, especially because pills weigh a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a lot at all.
No. The state of Florida says that you have to go to prison for 3 years. Oh. And the only person that can waive that is the state attorney. So wow. You can, as a defense attorney, you can show the state attorney that, hey, my client's an addict. This was for personal use. Look at all of their priors have to do with possessions. They are really active in their addiction. And they can say, I don't care, goodbye. They're going up the road for at least 3 years.
Wow.
So
I thought North Carolina was bad, but has this been
Welcome to Florida.
Has this been since your governor has become governor, or was this before?
This was before. So
wow.
I've been a defense attorney almost 7 years now, going on 7 years, and this has been an issue as long as I've been practicing.
Wow.
And they are getting worse. So yeah,
they're going hard on
fentanyl.
Crime thing, that they think that if they hit the addicts harder with a prison sentence that it'll somehow cure their disease of addiction when it's been proven that that's not how we fix addiction.
I agree.
It's simple supply and demand, but for some reason we just can't get on board here in Florida. So
right, we've wasted trillions of dollars on the war on drugs since.
I agree. I hear you well.
Yeah, and it hasn't gone anywhere. So
is that some of the same issues that you would speak to, Amanda?
Yeah, there's plenty to go on. There's bail reform.
Oh yeah, okay.
There's a ton of people sitting in jail that have not been proven guilty of anything, that just simply cannot afford their bond, and that's unacceptable in America. You're supposed to be innocent until you're proven guilty, but if you're poor, that doesn't apply to you. That's a huge issue.
Wow.
Yeah, prison conditions are also
mass incarceration.
Mass
just
incarceration,
the sheer amount of people.
Wow.
Them being treated as slaves for labor for free. It's really sickening if you really get into it.
We have a huge issue here in Florida where there are several prisons without any air conditioning. And
it was 95 degrees today.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
and people are in cement blocks. Yeah. So there's a lot of issues, but I think some of the more attainable ones that I think people can get on board with are the sentencing reform. That is something that I think bipartisan. I think people can agree that the judges have been elected to do a job, and I think we can get a lot of people on board with the fact that if we elect judges, that means we trust them to take into account the severity of the offense and any mitigating circumstances and deem a correct sentence. So I think sentencing reform is pretty attainable if we raise awareness about it. I think the death penalty is something we can work towards. Right now, we, as I stated earlier, have been executing mentally ill people in Florida. I think a good first step towards abolishing the death penalty is agreeing that maybe we shouldn't be executing mentally ill people. I think that's pretty attainable if we, again, raise the awareness about it. So I think there is definitely hope, and I think there can be agreement bipartisan-wise on several issues. I think there is common ground out there.
It affects everybody, really.
Yeah. Well said. And I do understand your my thoughts on all of this, and some of the same things that you're talking about are matters that we're dealing with here in North Carolina also. So I guess it's probably nationwide when it comes to mass incarceration and all these other issues that affect the criminal justice systems. So I do feel you, know exactly where both of you are. Now, when you're dealing with anything, I don't care what issues they are, when you are trying to make change, you work hard at it. So how do you remain, keep you calm? How you remain empathetic? How do you keep going, in the face of all of these challenges that seem so big that it looks like you are not making progress, and but you want to continue it. So how you do it without getting burnt out?
There's little wins.
Oh, okay.
For sure. There's little wins.
Okay.
Justine can testify to that.
All right.
She sees people get better because of the work that she does firsthand. And so that alone, that's something,
Okay.
I actually had a really funny interaction with a former client recently. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, but when I met him, he was he had basically committed a burglary because he was in a meth psychosis, and he had no criminal record. It was just very out of the ordinary. It was not something he typically did, but he hadn't slept in days, and he was in a psychosis. And this was one of those cases where he should have went to prison, but I was able to get the prosecutor to let him go to treatment. So he went to treatment and he did well. And, that was kind of the last I saw him. Well, I was in the co-op recently.
Mm.
And I had a really funny interaction. I was walking out with my lunch and I see him in the aisle and he goes, he waves to me and I said, "Oh my God, how are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, just reading the ingredients on the food that I'm eating." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm all about that. That's great." And he goes, "I can't believe I used to put meth in my body. I don't even know what's in that stuff."
Oh,
And
wow.
it was just so funny. So,
Oh, wow.
it's like seeing stuff like that, but just
Mm,
remembering that
yeah.
like at the bottom of everything, yes, if you look at everything in a huge macro level, it can be really daunting because
Mhm.
it's like there's so many issues and so many things need change in every aspect, not just the criminal justice system, but with climate change and with everything that's happening out in the world. But if we bring it down to a micro level and
Mhm.
just remember we're humans interacting on a day-to-day basis, and
Wow.
there are several people that work together, and meeting people with inspiring stories like I know you must be able to relate to because of your podcast, but
Mhm.
just being able to hear what people have gone through and come out on the other side, that's really inspiring, and just
Wow.
really breaking it down to that micro level of one day at a time, one day at a time.
Mhm.
Well, I want to just thank you, Justine and Amanda, for this awesome interview. You're great, and I think listeners have just got to hear what you have to say, and I take it in, and I think we all will be for the better. So I'm grateful to you. And so there you have it. Justine and Monda, both who are strong advocates for criminal justice reform, advocating for treatment over incarceration, second chances, abolition of the death penalty, and humanizing those who are impacted by the criminal justice system. What an awesome two individuals we've had to share with us today. And there you have it. Until next time, peace and blessings to each of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us on.